Gangs of New York delves into the heart of America's formative struggles with a visceral intensity depicting the pain, passion, and friction of the 19th century in New York. Amidst the cobblestone arteries of 5 Points, a crucible of cultures seethes with the raw energy of nascent America. Here, Bill the Butcher's cleaver slices through the cacophony of history, carving a narrative of nativism that collides violently with waves of Irish immigrants, capturing an age-old American tale of xenophobic fear and the pursuit of belonging. This isn't merely history, it's the blood-stained chronicle of the American melting pot, set against the backdrop of a nation sundered by civil war. The Draft Riots erupt, a fiery testament to a society riven by class and race, a city warring within as the country battles without. Through the smoke, the narrative plunges into the shadowy realms of Tammany Hall, where law, order, and corruption dance a dangerous waltz to the tune of Boss Tweed's insidious symphony. Each vignette is a brushstroke in this rich, complex portrait of American life, where survival blurs with morality and power is wrested in the grim pursuit of influence. And amidst the chaos, the film finds the pulse of redemption as personal vendettas yield to growth and forgiveness. With sinew and spirit, Gangs of New York weaves a story as raw and provocative today as it was a century and a half ago, holding a mirror to the face of America, reflecting a historical saga steeped in relevance, a testament to the enduring themes that still shape the American experience. Law, order, and corruption. The story of law, order, and corruption in New York City during the 19th century is a tale woven through the very fabric of America's development, as gritty and complex as the streets where it unfolded. At the heart of this narrative is Tammany Hall, a name that would become synonymous with the seedy underbelly of political machinations and a symbol of the insidious nature of unchecked power. Founded as a social club in 1789, Tammany Hall evolved into the democratic political machine that ruled New York City for nearly 2 centuries. Its most notorious leader, William M. Tweed, better known as Boss Tweed, turned Tammany into an empire of graft and influence. Under his reign in the mid-19th century, Tammany Hall's tentacles reached deep into the city's infrastructure. It manipulated elections, controlled law enforcement, and preyed upon the city's swelling immigrant population, offering aid in exchange for political loyalty. The film Gangs of New York captures the essence of this tumultuous era, with city officials and criminal elements intertwined in a dark dance of power and profit. Politicians, draped in the finery of their offices, walked hand in hand with the leaders of the underworld, gang bosses who ruled their domains with iron fists. These figures, though sharply dressed in the garb of respectability, were mired in the filth of corruption as deeply as the poorest denizen of the 5 Points. Boss Tweed's Tammany Hall became a masterclass in political corruption, where votes were bought and sold like common goods and justice was twisted to serve the whims of those in power. The hall's influence was so pervasive that it seemed as though every brick laid in the growing metropolis bore its mark. Elections were not won based on merit or policy, but were auctions where the highest bidder claimed victory. Democracy be damned. In the world of Gangs of New York, this relationship between the corrupt political class and the criminal underworld is laid bare. Characters like Bill the Butcher not only rule the streets, but are also kingmakers, their support courted by politicians like those from Tammany, who understood that power in New York was wielded not with a gavel, but with a knife. The film's interpretation of this era is an echo of the historical accounts of Tammany's vice-like grip on the city's governance, a grip that was sustained by a combination of fear, obligation, and the lure of easy money. The corruption was not merely a collection of isolated incidents, but a systemic rot. Historical records reveal how Tammany Hall's corruption reached its zenith under Boss Tweed, with the infamous Tweed Courthouse standing as a monument to embezzlement. The project, initially budgeted at $250,000, ballooned to over $13 million, approximately $325 million today, with much of the funds lining the pockets of Tweed and his associates. This grand larceny was part of a larger pattern that saw as much as $200 million siphoned from the city's coffers into the maw of Tammany Hall. It was the dogged work of political reformers and journalists like Thomas Nast and William Riordan who brought the Tammany Tigers' deeds into the light. Their exposés and cartoons in newspapers like Harper's Weekly illuminated the depths of Tammany's depravity to the public, shattering the illusion of benign leadership. The power of the press, armed with hard facts and the outrage of the citizenry, eventually toppled Tweed's empire. In 1871, the New York Times published evidence of Tweed's malfeasance, leading to his arrest, conviction, and ultimate downfall. Yet, Gangs of New York is not just a reflection of the past. It is a prescient reminder of the ongoing vigilance required to maintain the integrity of civic institutions. The film's portrayal of the intertwined fates of lawmakers and lawbreakers is a timeless warning against the temptations of power and the fragility of democracy. As the credits roll, we're left with the realization that the battle for the soul of the city was not just fought in the dimly lit halls of Tammany or the blood-soaked streets of the Five Points, but in the very hearts of its inhabitants, who bore the consequences of their leaders' transgressions. This tale of Tammany Hall and the corrupt arteries that fed into the beating heart of New York City serves as a dramatic lesson in the perils of power left unchecked, a narrative that transcends the boundaries of time, reminding us that the cost of freedom is eternal vigilance. Revenge and redemption. Amid the dirty streets of 19th century New York City, a young Irish American, Amsterdam Vallon, is consumed by a seething vendetta. The heart of our narrative beats to the drum of his singular mission to avenge his father's death at the hands of Bill the Butcher, a ruthless nativist gang leader. This quest for revenge is a microcosm of the broader societal conflicts of the era, a time when lawlessness was the unspoken law of the land, and redemption was a luxury few could afford. The year is 1863, and the nation is torn asunder by the Civil War. But another war brews in the streets of the Five Points, a notorious slum of lower Manhattan. It is here that Vallon returns after years in a reform school, the fires of retribution smoldering within. His target, Bill the Butcher, reigns over the district with a mix of fear and respect, a living testament to the nativist animosity towards the waves of Irish immigrants seeking refuge in America's bosom. Vallon's Odyssey is not just one of personal vengeance, but also a vivid portrait of the cycle of violence that inflicts communities when the rule of law is a whisper amidst the cacophony of survival. Vallon infiltrates the Butcher's inner circle, the heart of nativist power, seeking the opportune moment to strike. Yet, as he weaves himself into the fabric of the local underworld, he becomes entangled in the lives of its denizens, witnessing the plight of the oppressed, the corruption of power, and the glimmers of humanity within the Butcher himself. This duality of man, as capable of cruelty as of kindness, challenges Vallon's perception of justice. The film Gangs of New York masterfully illustrates this struggle, encapsulating the historical essence of the times. Vallon's personal journey against the backdrop of a city in chaos becomes a gripping tale of the destructive force of revenge and the redemptive power of forgiveness. In an era where the lives of the immigrant Irish were valued less than the dirt of the streets they lived on, Vallon's quest takes on a greater meaning. The Five Points becomes a stage where the larger national conflicts of identity, citizenship, and humanity play out in brutal microcosm. The nativist sentiment that Bill the Butcher embodies is not just a personal prejudice, but a national policy reflected in the anti-immigrant legislation and sentiment of the time. As Vallon draws closer to his nemesis, the larger-than-life Butcher, the film brings us to pivotal historical events, such as the New York City Draft Riots. These riots were a manifestation of the class and racial antagonisms fueled by the Civil War's conscription laws, which allowed the wealthy to avoid the draft by paying for substitutes. The poor, many of whom were Irish immigrants, saw this as the ultimate betrayal by their adopted nation, a sentiment that Vallon understands and which complicates his quest for personal revenge. The year 1863 becomes etched in the annals of history not just for the battles fought in distant fields, but for the bloodshed in the streets of New York. The riots lay bare the inequities and prejudices that simmer beneath the surface of society, a reminder that the battle for equality and justice is often fought far from the sanctity of courts and the halls of governance. In this tumultuous setting, Vallon's confrontation with Bill the Butcher is inevitable, a crescendo of personal and historical tensions. But the journey alters Vallon, and the lust for revenge becomes a search for meaning in a world bereft of easy answers. The possibility of redemption looms on the horizon, a beacon that suggests violence might not be the only path, that the cycles of hatred can be broken, and that from the ashes of the old a new understanding can be forged. The film culminates not just with the clash of two men, but with the evolution of a soul. Amsterdam Vallon stands as a symbol of the possibility of redemption in an age of retribution. His story, interwoven with the tapestry of New York City's history, serves as a powerful narrative, brimming with the painful realities of its era, the ever-present human quest for vengeance, and the hopeful whisper of forgiveness. Through Vallon's eyes, we witness the birth pangs of the modern American identity, one shaped by the confluence of diverse cultures, the struggle for power, and the quest for a moral compass in a world where the lines between right and wrong are as blurred as the foggy streets of the Five Points. His story, steeped in the history of the time, becomes a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring search for redemption in the dark corners of the American dream, survival and morality. The film Gangs of New York thrusts us into this cauldron of survival and morality, a world where the lines between right and wrong are as blurred as the fog that clings to the cobblestones of this urban wilderness. In 1846, the notorious Five Points was an intersection of survival for the destitute, the desperate, and the criminal. The name itself became synonymous with squalor, violence, and vice. Here, in the heart of America's most populous city, residents faced conditions that were unimaginable to the genteel society blocks away. The tenements were overcrowded and unsanitary, a breeding ground for disease and despair. In this environment, the struggle to survive often meant compromising one's morality, a theme that Gangs of New York explores with unflinching clarity. Life in Five Points was a stark testament to the disparities of the Industrial Revolution. While the rich reveled in opulence, the poor were left to navigate a labyrinth of survival. By 1855, the area had one of the highest population densities in the world, with an estimated 39,000 people per square mile. The gangs that roamed these streets did so not just for territory, but for the very means of life itself. The film captures this relentless pursuit, where the currency of survival was often stolen or begged for, and loyalty was as fragile as the next meal. The characters in Gangs of New York embody the struggle between survival and morality. They steal, they fight, and they betray, not always because they want to, but because they often see no other way. The protagonist, Amsterdam Vallon, faces this moral quandary repeatedly. He seeks vengeance, but also grapples with his own conscience and the idea of justice in a world that seems to have abandoned it. His quest is set against the backdrop of the Civil War, where the nation itself is in a fight for its soul, mirroring the internal conflict that Amsterdam faces. In 1863, as the nation was torn apart by war, the government instituted a military draft. Wealthy New Yorkers could avoid conscription by paying a $300 fee, a fortune unreachable for the impoverished residents of Five Points. This policy inflamed tensions and exposed the chasm between rich and poor. It culminated in the New York Draft Riots, one of the deadliest and most destructive civil disturbances in American history, which the film dramatizes with visceral intensity. These riots were not just about the draft, they were about survival. The rioters, many from 5 Points, targeted symbols of the establishment that they believed had forsaken them. Black citizens who were not subject to the draft became scapegoats for the rioters' frustration and fear, leading to racially charged violence. The film captures this eruption of anger, showcasing how survival can warp morality into something unrecognizable. Morality in 5 Points was as complex as the web of alleys and lanes that made up the district. The film delves into this complexity, showing how individuals like Bill the Butcher can become both revered leaders and brutal oppressors. In his world, morality is subordinate to power and survival. It is a luxury that the inhabitants of 5 Points cannot afford. As the film progresses, the characters face choices that pit their instinct for survival against their sense of right and wrong. The portrayal of these choices is not romanticized, but presented as a harsh reality. The characters' actions are often questionable, but their motivations are rooted in the human desire to endure against the odds. The narrative of Gangs of New York is steeped in historical truth. The 5 Points existed, as did the corruption, the violence, and the struggle. It was a place where children grew up too fast, and the old were forgotten. Yet even in this harsh landscape, there were glimmers of humanity, moments where individuals transcended their circumstances and acted with compassion and honor, often at great personal risk. By the time the film concludes, the audience is left to ponder the complexities of survival and morality. The 5 Points, eventually raised in the name of progress, is a testament to the human condition. The district's narrative continued as a part of history with the construction of the New York City Civic Center and other projects that sought to erase the area's sordid past. Yet the story of 5 Points remains a powerful reminder that when survival is on the line, morality can become a malleable concept, one that is shaped by the needs and fears of the moment. The film captures this essence, offering a window into a past that still has much to teach us about the present and the nature of humanity itself. Gangs of New York is more than a historical epic. It's a meditation on the human spirit's resilience and the eternal conflict between what is necessary and what is right. As the dust settles on the streets of 5 Points, Gangs of New York leaves us with a vivid tableau of America's tumultuous youth. The film's exploration of nativism, corruption, and the crucible of the American melting pot serves not merely as a historical account, but as a resonant reflection on the themes that continue to shape our national discourse. Through the lens of Scorsese's epic, we are compelled to confront the perennial struggles over identity, power, and morality. The narrative, steeped in the past, echoes into our present, reminding us that the battles fought in the shadow of old New York's tenements are far from relics. They are the enduring heartbeats of America's ongoing saga, urging us to heed the lessons of history as we navigate the complexities of our time. If this narrative resonated with you, do support us. Hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe. Thank you for staying with us to the end. See you in the next video on Plaid Chronicles.